What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and in today's video I wanted to talk about the New World closed beta, give you my general impressions and thoughts based on playing up to about level 20. Most importantly, talk about what has changed since the previous beta and kind of the state of the game and where I think it is going to be heading. So while we do this, we're just going to be running around fighting some stuff, just kind of messing around. But first off, I want to touch on my previous coverage because I had a couple of key things that I thought were very wrong with the game. And a lot of those still haven't been addressed. So one of the first ones is resource ninjas are still a thing. To talk about that in particular, when it comes to getting resources, for example, take, let me find a regular tree that I can get. All of the resources from a tree depend on the final hit of that tree, or whether it's oil, or whether it's, you know, whatever the case is. So for example, I hit this tree 3 times, I got 5 wood out of it. But if I was to hit this tree only a couple times here, you know, you can see there's a little meter that's slowly filling up. But let's say I get it to there, and some guy pulls a wolf onto me, and the wolf attacks me, stops my animation. He can run up, get those last 2 swings in, or that last 1 swing in, or whatever the case is, and he is going to get all of the wood for that. Now, personally, I think that's a fundamental problem. Obviously, it's not a concern with something like trees, but when you get later in the game and we're talking rare resources, things like star metal or gold, or, you know, your high-end crafting mats, I fully expect people to basically drag mobs onto another player to knock that player off the node and then attempt to steal that node. You know, anybody who's done gathering in MMOs knows just how scummy it can be in that gathering race, and I think that is still going to be a big problem. Another issue, which they have not addressed, is you can still block resource spawns by placing a camp down. Now, back in the beta, we were able to, the last beta, we were able to test this via doing the oil fields. But what people would do is, you know, they'd hit a rare resource, and then they would drop a camp on top of it. And let's say it's something that you know is on a 30-minute spawn timer. They would then keep that camp there, leave, and then come back at 29 minutes, destroy their camp, grab the resource, relay their camp, and be on their way. Basically, preventing anybody else from taking that rare spawn. Now, you could either, you know, give a variance in where stuff is going to be able to spawn to make sure that somebody can't actually block a resource, or you could just take your camp and say, you know, this camp cannot be placed here, it must be placed farther away. Whatever the case is going to be. But the fact still remains that right now you can still block resources via your camp. Up next, apply a 50% speed reduction or dazed effect to enemies hit while sprinting in combat. That they have actually addressed. So they've made a big change into PvP here. And I don't remember the exact numbers, you can check in the patch notes. But basically, if you are in a sprint, like how I am right now, and then you swing, you can start your sprint up again within about a second. If you're in a sprint and you run up and you hit somebody, though, that person has a delay before they're able to just go into a sprint again. Delay of roughly about 2 seconds or so. It might be like 2.75. Anyway, long story short, now if you are going after people in PvP and you manage to hit somebody while they're running, it is going to slow them on down and they're not going to be able to get away as easily. People are still going to try and run. But between that and, you know, just using some stuff that are gap closers and whatnot, it's pretty easy to stay on top of your target now. And I think it is going to prevent people from running a lot more than it did back in the beta. I don't know why I can't go in here to do the quest. It's a little weird. Another big change. Weapons no longer share global cooldowns. If I go through all of my axe abilities and then I swap to sword and shield, I have a completely different set of abilities that I can use. Back in the previous beta test, cooldowns were shared, so as long as this was on cooldown, I couldn't swap on over and start using my axe abilities. I think that is a very welcome change to the combat. It makes it flow a lot better. You know, it feels like we're able to just go through our class more. You know, play with our abilities, have everything at our disposal. And another big change there is previously we had access to 3 weapons. Now it's been knocked down to 2, which I do think is the right call. If you were still at 3 weapons and you had all the cooldowns, we would see pretty much everybody just like swapping to an ice gauntlet to put out some AoE or something like that. So I do think that is a very welcome change. Now your choices feel a little bit more important, you know, whether you're going to take a 1 PvP and 1 PvE weapon, or maybe a healing or tanking weapon and then a DPS weapon. Either way, I feel the choice is more impactful. Moving on from there, another concern I had was that combat is very much just R1 spam. It was very stagger heavy. You could essentially lock players down. You know, using something like the hatchet or the sword and shield, you could just keep swinging. And now you see we have a 3-hit combo instead. If I were to swap over, I don't have a hatchet on me right now, but similarly the hatchet now has a set combo as opposed to just continual swings with the weapon. And there is a little bit of hit stagger in PvP, especially when like you're using abilities and whatnot, but you can't just run up and hit people and lock them in place anymore. So another very big change there that I think is going to help improve the longevity of the game. It's going to help keep the combat a little bit healthier. In terms of like a parry or a counter mechanic, we still don't have that, which I feel we should have something. You know, we have a stamina system, but right now it's only really used for dodging, and then dodging and blocking. Oh, I think I turned on sticky keys there. Yeah, I did. Let me kill this real fast. Where's this at? There we go. So, I don't know. Personally, I think having some type of parry would be useful, but I understand that they're, to the right now at least, they're kind of limiting that to certain key weapons. The rapier has a riposte animation you can do where you can counter somebody, get a counter attack, and stun them. So I think if everybody had something where you could block and swing to do a parry, I could certainly see certain weapons being more advantageous with that over others. And the last major complaint that I had in the previous beta was the lackluster variety of, frankly, everything in the game. And while they have improved some stuff, they haven't improved everything. I do think the game is still lacking in certain areas. You're still going to fight a lot of skeletons. You're still going to fight a lot of pirates. But in the previous iteration, towns were basically copy and paste. This town, well, let me scroll down here. Which settlement was it? It wasn't you. I think it was this guy over here. Oh, not that one. There we go. This one right here, how there's a little boat and all that. We also had that copy and pasted up here because this town used to be over here, closer to the coastline. And instead, they've shifted the towns around a little bit. And part of shifting those towns, they've redone the layout on some towns. So, personally, the towns still don't have a lot of personality. I think that, you know, when you think about the cities that you visit in Elder Scrolls Online or World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV or whatever MMO it is that you're playing, a lot of the cities have lots of personality. You know, I mean, God, just to think about like, what was it, Hinagashi or whatever in Stormblood? I wasn't a big fan of Stormblood, but that was a badass city. And unfortunately, all the cities in New World, they just, you know, they just feel like little hamlets, little settlements. And I get that's, you know, that's basically the vibe they're going for here. But personally, I think the game would benefit from having just a little bit more, you know, just something that makes this, you know, whether it's, oh, this is the main bastion of the Marauders, or this is the Syndicate headquarters. You know, we need some type of capital cities, something that is big and loud and really says like, whoa, you know, you want to be blown away when you get to a city. And right now, every single one of these settlements are, they're not, while they're not copy and paste anymore, they are all very simple still. So, you know, when I go to a settlement right now, I'm like, all right, I'm in here to turn in my quest, craft some stuff, and then I'm gone. There is absolutely nothing that makes me want to explore the settlement and learn more about it, which I think it's, you know, I feel that they're losing something there. You know, you want players to embrace your cities and explore them, and that's not the case at all right now. But at the same time, at the very least, the cities aren't copy and paste anymore. So, slight improvement, slight, but an improvement nonetheless. So, with all of that out of the way, now let's talk about kind of where the game is at now. So they have made a lot of improvements, namely in optimization. The game runs a lot smoother than it did in the previous test. They've changed up a couple of quests and how quest flow is going to happen in general. I mean, the main quest, at least, there was a lot of changes there that I saw with getting your staff built. You know, stuff that seemed like, I guess it was filler content. That is no longer the case. And the combat does seem to flow a lot better. I haven't had any issues with hit detection or whatnot. You know, when I'm going through my combos and fighting, feels good, you know. If something dodges out of the way, it dodges. If I block and an attack comes in, I'm going to block and mitigate that damage. I don't feel like there's netcode issues, which is really, really important in a game like this because, you know, it's all free aiming combat. So that's good. It's good to know. You know, if it was messy at all, that would be a big thing that would hamper the total gameplay. Beyond that, I will say that I've done a little bit of the world PvP at the large scale on the forts. That can certainly be a little bit of a shit show, but it is really fun. One of the things that's really cool in the game is you're able to go down in stealth, and when you go down and you're in prone, it removes your nameplate. So players can still see you visibly, but how we've been running around and we've seen people with names above their head, that name won't appear. So you could effectively have 5 mates hiding in a bush waiting for a group to pass and then just jump out and get on top of them and start beating them down. And that's really cool from a world PvP perspective, because typically in MMOs, stealth is reserved for the rogue class, and everyone hates rogues because they're going to be that sneaky class that pops out of stealth and stabs you to death, and it just, you know, it pisses you off. But now, as opposed to it being like a class that you always have to be wary of, instead, if you're flagged for PvP, there could be an entire group that's just waiting for you, hiding in a bush, and you wouldn't even know until you're basically standing on top of them. There's actually a clip on the New World subreddit right now that's exactly that. It's hilarious. You have like 10 guys that are all stealthed and waiting, and there's like a war party that rides past, and this group jumps out and just starts dropping down massive ice AoEs, and people with great axes run out and start doing whirlwinds, and they wipe a group of like 20 players in probably about 10 seconds. And you're just like, damn, that is some major guerrilla warfare tactic type stuff. And that's really cool to see in a game because, you know, besides this, the only other game I can think of that has that large open world scale PvP, and not even really open world, but ESO to an extent. And the battles in ESO, the high scale battles at least, personally, I think they're just a wee bit too laggy. You know, it feels like as melee, you're really not doing anything. It's basically, you know, it's an artillery battle between mages and archers. Whereas in this, that is still true to an extent, but I feel like your melee classes, like if I'm running in with this axe, I am getting in there, and then I'm going to pop Reap to yank everyone in, get a fat heal. I'll probably end up running Gravity Well over Execute, just because it's a massive CC that locks players down. So it still feels like even in these large brawls, there is still a role for me to do with my axe. Even more so if you're a player that likes the Warhammer. The Warhammer just stuns everything. So you can just run on in, start dropping fat stuns on a group of people, and you know, you still have a presence even though you're not part of this artillery setup. So all that being said, right now I have a lot of fun with the combat in the game. I don't think this is going to be a knockout MMO. I don't think it's going to, you know, dethrone anything. But I am enjoying it a lot. I will definitely be playing it at launch. I still plan on going back and playing Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, just because I absolutely love the story writing in Final Fantasy, and right now I feel like that is one of the weaker points in this. I mean, it's not even so much that the story is bad in this, it's just that there is nothing that really has me interested in the story of this game. I'm just kind of like, oh, there's corruption, cool. Maybe this is just me being a disenfranchised 30-something that's played too many MMOs, but the story just does not do it for me. Whereas Final Fantasy XIV's story is dope as hell. Also probably has something to do with the fact that I've been invested in it for over 10 years. Anyway, all that aside, in terms of the world, so the world hasn't really changed much from the last beta. You know, we still, as you can see, we're fighting skeletons, we're fighting you know, lynxes, we're fighting rabbits, you know, these skeletons that crawl on the ground. There's another zone where there's more skeletons that crawl on the ground. And that's just, you know, that's the game. That there's, you know, that hasn't changed at all. Which is a little disappointing, but, you know, at the same time, I'm hoping that as I get to higher levels and I start experiencing more late game content, that is no longer the case. But time will tell, because frankly speaking, I don't want to level up all the way into the, you know, some people are already like level 60. I'm like, why? This is a beta. You're losing all your progress. It's going to be reset. That's silly. So I don't believe in doing that. I believe in, you know, I want to take my time and play the game and enjoy everything about it. not just power level through to get to the max level as fast as possible. In terms of content, though, you know, obviously it's going to take a long time to level up and get there. So I did get a chance to run the starter dungeon. It was pretty cool. The fights and the mechanics of the fights were pretty interesting. I will say one of the big downsides is even in the dungeon, though, once again, that lack of variety really showing through. The enemies we were fighting in the dungeon were basically the same as the enemies you see me fighting right now. You know, so the whole idea of like, you know, we're going into a dungeon and doing, you know, we're going to be fighting something that's hard. Even the boss, the final boss of the dungeon, was basically a copy and paste of another enemy in the world that I fought before. And so I think that there's definitely something to be said there. You know, I keep mentioning variety, and while they have made changes to the towns, still, you know, when you go into a dungeon, and I think about the dungeons in Final Fantasy, I think those are like the gold standard for what an MMO should push to be. You know, the fights are mechanically interesting, the bosses are really cool. Like, I mean, it's the stuff in Final Fantasy, man, going through those dungeons, especially like the Shadowbringers dungeons, when that music starts popping off, man, it is so hyped going through those dungeons. They are so much fun. And the dungeon in this, it did not spark joy. It did not make me feel like, whoa, this is crazy. It was just kind of like, all right, hey, some skeletons. Hey, there's some more skeletons. The one thing I will give them credit for is throughout the dungeon, there were like hidden caches that you could find that had loot. And everybody got their own loot out of the caches. So I thought that was really cool, because it wasn't just like, you know, kill a boss, get some loot. I mean, in some cases it was kill a boss, get some loot. But as you were going through the dungeon, it was more of an open world layout, and there were chests. Like there was one part where we found like a little water basin, and we jump off a ledge and go down into the water basin, and then up against the wall in the corner there's a chest, and then we had to climb our way back up to continue in the dungeon. Something like that is really cool. But they really need to improve the enemy variety and the distinction of the bosses to keep the PvE content interesting. Now, how PvE works super late game, I don't have enough experience to really speak to that. I don't know if the game has, you know, 20-man or 40-man content or raids or whatever the case is going to be. But I will say that based on what I've seen from the dungeons, I do not have high hopes. So kind of moving on to, I guess, what is the purpose of playing this game? As it is in its current state, personally, I think this game is going to be more targeted towards people that they want a new open world MMO that they can explore that has a strong PvP focus. There is some PvE content. There's obviously a lot of gathering you can do and just running around and exploring. But at the end of the day, it feels that this game, the bones of this game, were originally making it a PvP game, and then they backed off from it being super hardcore PvP to have a bit of a stronger PvE element. But those bones are still pushing through. You can still see that they designed this with PvP first, and because of that, the PvE content just really isn't there as much as I would like in a lot of MMOs. Because, you know, I'm a PvP person. Most of the time I play, I'm going to be doing fights, but at the same time, you know, there's going to be times where I just want to, you know, I just want to do a dungeon. I want to do some badass dungeon. I want to get some gear from it. I don't want to have to do PvP for everything. You know, if I'm playing by myself and none of my friends are on, and meanwhile the people I'm fighting are groups of 5 or 6 constantly, that gets a little tiring. You know, I want to be able to, I want an even batting food. And that's actually kind of another problem the game has right now is in terms of PvP activities, there is these large-scale PvP battles you can queue for once you get up closer to max level. I believe at max level it's like 60. And then there's the wars that'll happen. Those will happen periodically, you know, just like, hey, people are attacking this fort, and you can show up and battle for the fort. But there is no small-scale PvP outside of open world. So, you know, no lower-level battlegrounds, no lower-level arenas, which I also think that is a big miss. You know, I think when I think back to playing World of Warcraft, one of my favorite things to do is while questing, just queue up for a battleground. And given there were going to be twinks in there that had, you know, min-maxed their character to be as powerful as they possibly could at level 39 or whatever, you know, going in at level 35, killing a couple people, and then getting back to questing, that was really nice because it broke up the the rhythm of what I was doing. You know, it gave me something fresh to experience, something else that I could go in and do. Oh, here's some PvP, level 17. Let's chase him down. Chase him down. Boom! I like that combo a lot. That's not actually his sword, it's just a drop. But yeah, I mean, as you can see right there, the PvP, it didn't feel as, like, he was blocking and trying to escape, and I had to rush him down. It didn't feel nearly as spammy as it did back in the last beta. So I'm a big fan of the improvement they made there. But anyway, I feel like I've just rambled for 20 minutes, and that was kind of the intention of this video outside of the start. But as it is now, I mean, I'm going to play this game. I think it has a good foundation here. I also think there is a lot of work to do still. I think they've made good changes to the combat. I think they've made good changes to the classes and the trees in particular. I think they've made very, very good updates to. For example, you know, going over, this is a simple one. I'm not even playing Hatchet, but Hatchet now has a move, aim throw. So you could just play the Hatchet and just keep chucking out hatchets. I mean, they each cost 20 stamina, but still, you could play your whole thing with just throwing hatchets out, which I think that's really cool now, as a previously aimed throw was an ability, and you'd get to like throw 3 hatchets, and then you were going back to just melee attacking. So they've made really nice changes there. The newer weapons, stuff like the Great Axe, I'm a big fan of. I know a lot of the mage players are just absolutely vibing with the Ice Gauntlet, really strong CC option there. We're going to see a lot of that. But, you know, either way, I don't know. I'm having fun with the game. I don't know how the PvE content is going to be long term, but the best way I'm looking at this is in its current state. I think this is something that I will enjoy until something better comes along. And, you know, that's not the biggest vote of confidence, but, you know, as somebody who's always looking for new games to play, I think it'll be just fun to play until something better shows up. So either way, that is going to wrap up my thoughts. Thanks for tuning on in. Let me know what you guys think. And otherwise, I'll catch you next time.